now.
Okay, audio and video, I hope. Anyway, after all of this super practical, wet detail, and fortunately some really inspiring show and tell, but I wanted to have something that was artistic and inspiring and something special for this program. And we're fortunate enough to have 3 members who are artists who use weaving in their art in various ways. I'm going to introduce them all first, then each is going to give a little presentation, and then we'll do questions at the end. Okay, so first is Edi Dai, who received their BA in studio art from UCI in 2010 and worked at their alma mater cross-cultural center, organizing events in a public mural project. They then went on to earn their MFA in painting and printmaking from the Yale School of Art in 2019. They're the recipient of the Mark Trevor Award from the American Institute of Graphic Arts, as well as the Postgraduate Research Fellowship and the Helen Watson Winterness Award from the Yale School of Art. In 2018, they were part of the inaugural Diversifying Art Museum Leadership Initiative Fellowship at the Cleveland Museum of Art. Recently, they received the Merle K. Gable II Memorial Grant from the Handweavers Guild of America. So I should say all these, obviously, because they're members, are Southern California artists. I'm not reading the articles since they live in LA or wherever. Sohani Holland received her Bachelor of Arts in Digital and Environmental Studies from Harvard University, concentrating in large format photography and printmaking. While there, she became active in theater and fashion on technical crews events. She later obtained professional designation in apparel manufacturing management from FITM, which led to an interest in incorporating fibers and fabrics into public art. Drawing from her previous training at Alvin Ailey and Broadway Dance Center, coupled with 6 years of pole and aerial art, person in very good shape. Current projects seek to explore the intersection of sound, costuming, and theatrical dance. The aim is to use the body as an instrument for expression through improvisation and instinct, while colors, textures, and touch remain a central focus for guiding emotion and creative exploration. Soyoung Shin holds a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science from the University of Washington and is currently studying tailoring and fashion design at LA Trade Tech. Some of us know that she also grew some flax and shared that with us in one of our Zoom meetings. Her most recent exhibition was Hold Please, which there's a link to on our website description of the panel, at the Open Source Gallery in Brooklyn. So I'm going to let Edi take it away first. And you take off that.
And if you can possibly stand to the side of the, and let me share screen so that.
Can we move? Can we move it closer? Yeah. Oh, that's fine.
It doesn't bother me that there's like a little mini screen, but as long as that's okay with everyone else, that's just because.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Can everyone in the virtual world hear me?
Yeah.
So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'd like to send my thanks to Virginia for organizing this panel with Sohani and Soyoung. And thank you to the Valley Presbyterian Hospital for having me and having us and hosting us. My name is Edi Dai, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist who asks questions about painting, painting history, and knowledge production. Today, I'll be talking about my relatively new practice as of 2019, which foregrounds weaving, rowing, and spinning cotton as integral parts of my painting. In this body of work, I'm interested in how the painting, currently the canvas more specifically, how paintings as a commodity that circulates globally can tell us more about labor practices, global supply chain capitalism, and collective responsibility. The cotton industry as a global network of economic trade helps us understand the ways capitalism has shifted over the centuries. The cotton industry has not always depended on cheap or free labor. There was a time when individual family units would grow, spin, and weave their own cotton for small textiles or for smaller scale distribution. Centuries ago, attempts to increase textile production on a global scale in countries like China didn't last long because the social and economic conditions of human life were designed for a more local production. Unfortunately, different economic structures supported human trafficking systems, leading to chattel slavery, debt bondage, and misleading contracts, taking us to a different scale of oppressive labor practices that still exist today. I wonder, how can the collective public address current worker exploitations in sweatshops producing cheap cotton clothing? Can local and smaller regenerative approaches to production act as tools of resistance? In what ways can artists create spaces for alternative approaches? After looking into the history of cotton and cotton production, I learned about the many varieties of cotton color that come in the colors come in white, cream, tan, pink, brown, gray, green, and mauve. In the United States, these heirloom varieties of cotton have been historically marginalized in favor of the white cotton commonly found today. Through my work with colored cotton, I recognize the biased values inherent within the 18th and 19th century cotton industry and how these biases affect us today. Although breeders in the US, like Sally Fox, have worked for decades producing longer, stronger, and fuller organic colored cotton fibers, still many varieties are not durable enough to be spun or woven on industrial machines. However, colored cotton can still be appreciated for their resilience to arid climate, resistance to pesticides and flammability, reduction of water usage, and their natural color. So this here is my work. This is a series that I continue to do on today. I weave the canvases. They're all colored brown. They're on 14 by 12-inch canvas frames, and they come in all different shades. I have about over 100 specifically of these right now, and I hope to just keep going with every new color that comes. So now I'm going to go back in time a bit just to talk briefly about cotton cultivation historically, just for a little bit. The cultivation of cotton can be found throughout many civilizations on continents from the Americas, Africa, and Asia for thousands of years, as it's native to subtropical to tropical climates closer to the equator. One early example was found when archaeologists excavated a burial site in Mughal, Pakistan, dated 5500 to 6000 BC. Samples of cotton fiber were found preserved in the center of the copper bead, and the fibers were preserved through mineralization. It's often hard to find early examples of organic matter, but in this case, the cotton fiber was preserved by substituting the organic material with metallic salt due to the copper bead corroding. As a side note, there is no doubt that there could be examples of cotton cultivation in other parts of the world around this time or earlier, but this is just one example. It just so happens that one of the earliest known fragments of cotton textiles archaeologists have excavated happens to also include colored cotton. This fragment was in Huaca Preta, Peru, dated 6200 to 6000 BP, short for before the present. Pictured here, the warp yarns are both indigo dyed blue, and it's a little hard to see on the screen, but it's also naturally colored cotton yarn in a tan shade. The weft is a white fiber called shibbo, yarn from the stem of a vine in the milkweed family. There continues to be many accounts of colored cotton all over the world in the past thousands of years. Brown and white cotton have been found in a cave in Chihuahua Valley, Mexico, dated from 200 BC to 1540 AD, from an article that I've located and published in Economic Botany in 1968, titled Plant Fibers from the Chihuahua Valley, Mexico, by Cyril Smith and Thomas Kerr. In Louisiana, the Acadians have a long tradition of using cotton jaune, a variety of brown-colored cotton for hand-weaving blankets and bedding. A friend, Jacob Boussard, who was raised in Lafayette, Louisiana, shared with me when I talked to him about my newfound interest in colored cotton. The Acadian people, whose ancestors were French settlers exiled from Nova Scotia in the 1760s and resettled in southern Louisiana, had found cotton jaune already growing in Louisiana. And these are images from when I took a trip out to see this exhibit, like Acadian brown cotton fabric of Acadiana at the Hilliard Art Museum. And these are examples of the textiles that they had woven. And this was within the Hilliard Museum. As just so you can see what kind of tools they use. Other colored cotton include Nankin, which is a cotton more cream yellowish in color from Nanjing, China. The variety had been growing in the U.S. for domestic use in the 1800s and in smaller scales in the 1900s. Ishkako and kaki, brown shades of colored cotton, have been cultivated by the Mayan people in Guatemala. Some of the yarn I use, the bright pinks, greens, and grayish browns, and deep reddish browns, which I'll show on screen soon, and I'll have examples in person as well. Those are spun by artisans in San Juan, La Laguna, and Guatemala. And Coyuchi, which is what the Mixtec people in Oaxaca, Mexico, call their brown cotton that they've also been cultivating as well. So I'll just jump into my practice. The rest will be the work that I've been doing since 2019. I wanted to weave my own canvas to investigate the materials of painting, just because I have a painting background. Through my research, I learned about the colored varieties of cotton, but I wanted to have a learned practice with the cotton itself. Since I didn't know how to weave canvas, I decided to take a floor loom weaving class taught by Lucian Kochman at the Creative Arts Workshop in New Haven, Connecticut. This is my first canvas that I wove using colored cotton. I used a 12-deck reed and had 24 ends per inch, but actually still wanted to get a little bit more tautness for the canvas, which over time I've tried using different reeds from a 15 dent to a 25 to now a 32, which I like now. And the reason being is when I tried using the 15 dent, they were really close together, and then when I washed my textiles, it still didn't give me the uniform consistency for my warp. And the reason I didn't exactly do it multiple times, wash multiple times, or kind of agitate it a little bit more, is because for certain cottons, the color does change when it gets washed. And so I wanted to retain some of that depth in color. And so for some of the canvases that I weave, I don't wet finish them. And so I needed a dent that could provide me like a very even pacing. And this is an example of it. As you can see, there's a lot of space in between the yarn. that's the fabric that's been stretched over canvas frame. Then I found out about a kind of cotton grown in Peru called papucho, organic cotton, and it's by Nutritex. And I located this through a distributor, Eco Butterfly, who's in Ohio. And she answered all my questions and has been so kind. And so this is what started a lot of my other, the number of works that I've continued on. And you can see here are some more. This here is actually a set of canvases that are specifically somewhat mass, but manufactured fabric that's made of the colored cotton. It does exist, but it's still very limited. Here is a set of canvases, textiles that I wove using Sally Fox's spring cotton. The top left piece is just the canvas, the textile stretched by itself, not washed. And then as I've washed it in hot water, the colors changed. And with more washes, it became a little deeper, but after a certain point, it's retained its consistency and depth of color. Here is another set of work where and it's the ongoing work, where I collect all different kinds of canvases that are mass manufactured, intended for painters. And I collected them to see the different kinds of weave structures, which all of them have been plain weave, but there's very subtle changes in color for them. They're all within the same range. Here is kind of a little bit of a departure, and this is where I started changing up my beading style, where the bottom half is a little bit more densely packed than the upper half. And here's a picture of one of the first canvases that I've woven, including about 30 plus different varieties of colored cotton. They range from the Peruvian cotton and cotton from Guatemala to all different kinds of yarns from the United States. In this one, which is relatively new, a friend of mine shared a poem she wrote in which she talked about the sky. And for her, she's originally born in Iran. She noticed that when she came to America, that the depth and the height of the sky felt higher to her in the United States. And so through having conversations with her and talking about how the sky changes within each day, that we started talking about the different colors of the skies. And so this was inspired by looking at the sky at sunset in LA. Another part of my practice, which is pretty new, has been growing cotton, colored cotton specifically. And so for the Fibershed local project, since I couldn't locate enough cotton fiber for me to either spin or to buy, I decided why not learn how to grow my own colored cotton. And so this past year, that's what I've been doing. So I'm just gonna finish up these images and I'll take how we did you. That's me.
Oh, yeah.
And these are just some businesses that either use colored cotton or sell yarns and fibers. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
So now you're going to,
We're going to figure out how to share screen.
yeah, you should be able to share screen now.
Pack of the mask, glasses. A lot of situations.
So if I press share screen, it
I
works?
think you'll be able to, and let's see.
Okay, yeah.
But you're not on there, that's the problem.
Oh,
Just here. Okay. I thought we were going to share it from my Zoom, like a participant share.
Well, but then remember, we had trouble getting on the Zoom there.
I think we did it. I'm sharing.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
There we
Okay.
are.
so I don't need to do anything.
You can turn the chat off.
Okay, one second. Sit here. Let me put myself.
And you need to have your audio on now, I think.
Oh, there's no audio on for my.
No, but if they don't, if your audio isn't on your computer, I don't know.
Hello?
No, that's on for the Zoom.
You should mute your. Right, I think I should mute myself because isn't
Okay.
that picking up the
Okay.
audio? Technical. Wait. Computer. Okay. It's working. Hi. A little break there. Really a pleasure to be here, and thank you for allowing me to share. It's been a wonderful exercise to take the time and just start to review the beginnings of my journey.
Sorry.
So where did it all start? I moved to LA in October 2007, and in December 2010, I was running to leave at Farmstall Art Center to Carolyn Potter. I was on a small table room, and once we got past the working, I became quickly thrilling with testing yarns and work textures. Featured here is my first sampler, which I also bought in person. And you can see early on, I was using materials like plastic grocery bags and finding delight in how it transformed. There were two of her donated yarns that I found particularly mesmerizing, one metallic and another slub. And I thought, well, maybe I can turn this into a clutch. And clearly, exactly what happened. I loved the class, and I was proud of what I made, and I hung the piece on the wall at home. But, you know, life is a way of happening, and we get into the busyness of work, and I didn't own a loom or have the space. But what I did have was this lingering desire to create. And I knew until I made my art practice a priority, until I made room for it, I was going to continue in the same spiral of life. So in November 2012, I did just that. Yes, I was a studio art major at Harvard, and yes, I had a degree in apparel manufacturing from FITM, but I was not fully realized in what it was I could make in that version of now. One thing I did know was that I collected beads. In every city I've ever lived in, I found a bead store. And for the first few years, I was a member of LA's Bead Society. In support of my creative exploration, one of the first women I met here, fashion designer Elizabeth Benson, who I'm wearing now, suggested that I hold a trunk show at her shop on 3rd Street. The goal-oriented side of me needed a theme and time to make because up until now, all I did was collect. So I suggested the 100th day of the year, April 10th, 2013, and I arrived with 103 one-of-a-kind pieces made of bone and glass and
stones sourced from all over the world. But it was while I was shopping at a bead store in Santa Monica, at the checkout, behind the counter, I spotted this incredible.
It's a hospital. So
Oh,
we're
okay,
hearing
hospital. All right. So I spotted this incredible banana fiber and recycled silk yarn. I had never seen anything like it before, and I bought as much of it as I could afford, and I started using it as a signature at the nape of the neck as a way to hide the knot exposures on my necklaces. Intrigued, I got onto Google and soon found a company that was also getting started by the name of Darn Good Yarn. Owner Nicole Snow worked with women's co-ops in Nepal and India, where they manipulated banana fibers into yarn and turned excess silk sari fashion waste into ribbons. The collector in me wanted to begin a new haul, but I held back. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait too long. In July 2013, a friend who remembered my sampler called to ask me if I would help execute a project idea she had for the bathrooms of an intimate fine dining sushi restaurant opening in downtown LA. She was now working for a high-end interior design firm, and she wanted me to weave 2 pieces in less than a month. Nervous because I had only taken the one course, but honored because this was her reputation at work, I said, send me the inspiration board and let's see what I can do. To my surprise, the very texture she wanted was similar to what I had just recently sourced at Darn Good Yarn. So I said yes, and we started picking out colors and assigning finished sizes. Also lucky for me, the concept was to make tapestries that were unfinished, as in complete in their incomplete state. I still had to put together a proposal, and again, through the grace of Google, I discovered the practice of sawari weaving. This Japanese hand style began the springboard for both concept and courage. But I still didn't have a loom. So I did the next best thing and went to the art store and bought canvas stretcher bars in the appropriate sizes and built 2 frame looms. And for the next couple of weeks, I came home from work, I sat on my floor, I turned up the music, and I made both tapestries. We installed in August, and in December, the same friend surprised me with a forwarded email affirming my creative offering. The restaurant was owned by a law firm, and one of the owners had a friend, a Japanese glass artist, that was passing through LA on the way back from our Boston, Miami. She happened to stop by while he was there, and he shared a story about how she returned from the bathroom. All she could talk about for 10 minutes or so in excited Japanese was the tapestry in the women's bathroom. She said it was unfinished, but in a way that the artist had an amazing sense. She gushed about how the artist had a feel for how to cut it off where it was, that most artists would have done more or less. The whole tapestry would have been normal, but this was extraordinary, that the viewer would never expect it to be cut there, but it was. She used the word for sense about 30 times, he wrote. Honestly, I couldn't talk about the fish or myself or much else because she was just obsessed with the tapestry. Later, he asked one of the managers about the pieces, and she said that she's had that reaction maybe 3 other times already, and she even had to write down the artist's name. He closed his email with, so I think I will either stop finishing things, it clearly becomes intriguing, or I will really concentrate more on what I hang in my bathroom, as people apparently really fixate on things. Or maybe I just shouldn't bring my BlackBerry with me. Dance was my original art form. I started taking dance and gymnastics classes in kindergarten, and I understood early on the relationship between the body and music, as well as the body and meditation. I didn't discover fine art until my junior year at Bronx School of Science, building my art portfolio with Cooper Union, so I could apply to Cornell's architecture program. Finding photography at Cooper Union helped me merge the technical and the creative, and it was the first visual art practice that I felt like I could execute with confidence. The tactile nature of weaving did the same. And the added layer of listening to music while weaving, the same music that I would go out and dance to until the sun came up, I started bridging ideas about what to do next. So one Sunday, March 16, 2014, I decided to show up to my friend's warehouse event that went from day to night. Instead of being in the middle of the dance floor, my new position was on a futon next to the speaker. I had my back to everyone, and I sat down with my frame and my hems and my recycled silk, curious to see what would come out of it. I hadn't made anything since the restaurant. I wasn't looking for attention. I just wanted the chance to experiment. Besides, it was as comfortable as home, but with a way better sound system. People would stop by and check in on me to say hello, and as the night fell, the room got darker until the only light was this red glow from the side table lamp. I knew what colors I had brought, but without proper lighting, I found myself just playing in tones and becoming less attached to a particular outcome. These were the event photos I was tagged on Facebook, and shortly thereafter, another friend asked me if I would join her for brewery art walk. She was a photographer hosting a 2-day event complete with live DJs. She had a painter for the second day, but was looking for another artist for day 1 and thought I would be perfect. All I had to do was show up and bring my yarns and weave and hang out with my friends. Okay, I can do that. On April 26, 2014, I propped my frame on my djembe drum and started moving yarn. What I didn't expect was for so many people to talk to me, telling me stories about how they remember seeing weaving in their life. Stories of families from all over the world, travels, their memories. At one point, I started asking people to help me choose the next color, until eventually I shifted so we could share this bench seat. By the end of the day, this frame was filled with the energy of those who passed by and their gratitude for being able to shift from passive viewer to active participant during an art walk. The impact of the day was not lost on me, and I sent an email to a friend that was working at the Hammer Museum, letting him know that I was not sure what happened, but I was on to something. He forwards my email to the organizers of Downtown LA Art Walk. They write back that the theme for the month is fabric, fibers, and fashion, and they have room to host me as a featured artist if I wanted to repeat my experience from the brewery. Of course, I say yes, but also once again, I'm without a loom. So I go to the library and find a book detailing how to make a version of a freestanding Navajo weaving loom. On May 8th, 2014, I show up with my yarn, wearing batik silks from India, made by the same designer that hosted my jewelry truck show. It was important for me not to have traditional signage, to instead embody the sign. I was not interested in convincing people to join, but instead have them meet me in my state of being. Some folks would pass by, some would watch, others would linger long enough to ask questions, at which point I would invite them to try. It always began the same. Pick a color. Decide how long you want to hold this piece of yarn. What is comfortable for your body? And then cut it from the ball. Pick a place to begin, and then just over, under, over, under. This was not about following me on social media. You only found out my name if you asked. Instead, this was each person having an individual, unexpected experience that they chose to participate in, allowing themselves the surprise of something new, but yet so ancient and embedded in our DNA. What I also didn't realize at the time was in my own moments of not knowing, I was being gifted the gaze of teacher, authority, facilitator. It didn't matter that I didn't technically consider myself an artist. It didn't matter that by day I work in finance and accounting. The moment I placed myself in this context, it was assumed that I belonged. June 12, 2014, the next date for the next Downtown LA Art Walk. This time, I wanted to be on the street. I wanted to arrive early before the art walk began. I wanted to know what would happen out of the context of a formal event space. Would it work? I had 2 friends that recently opened a designer vintage retail shop. For them, I made a frame loom out of molding to give a decorative touch. I was starting to unpack when 2 men stopped in front of the frame. The one who spoke English asked if this was mine. I said yes, but it was for all of us. Would you like to try? He went on to explain that the older man is from a family of rug weavers in Iran, to which I replied, let me get you a chair. There are 54 colors to choose from, just pick one. One woman that passed by, the next up was a lady who needed to kill time before her next meeting. She had so much fun that she called her friend and told her, just meet me here instead. One woman that passed by was a fashion teacher at LA Trade Tech, and we got to talking, and she asked if I would be interested in presenting at her class. For the chapter on weaving, usually she gave the students a take-home quiz, but this time she gave them the option to do a hands-on lesson with me. 1 month later, here I am, pictured with a student that had so much fun, she walked me to my car. She said, you know, I was one of the ones that almost showed the quiz. The following month, August 2014, I went back to the store in downtown LA for shop walk, this time bringing my jewelry and taking the opportunity to finish the original golden piece. This day was particularly special because my mom was in town and she got to weave with me. While there, one of the shop employees told me about a new creative space called the Container Yard. He later introduced me to the owners, and on November 4th, 2014, I created an installation for Bloom Fest in their location in the LA Arts District. This time, I wanted to figure out how to have more than one person participate at once and bracketed 3 frames together. Because I would often witness this hesitance of not knowing what to do or how to start, I found using recognizable components such as nails and picture frames as a great equalizer to demonstrate that anyone really can weave. While at this event, I ran into my friend Ron Finley, who some of you may know from his TED Talks as the Gangster Gardener. He was starting a series of events and was interested in including me. And pictured here in the lower right was the second person to approach that day. She was in her mid-70s and had more spunk than most. I saw her eyes widen and fill with this eureka moment when she walked around the installation and asked if I could adapt this for her art class. I naturally said, of course, and she's volunteered at a facility in Laguna for adults with special needs. December 11, 2014, I'm back at Downtown Art Walk, but this time in a special holiday lounge showcasing artists that have participated throughout the year. Realizing that I was going to be dealing with a high volume crowd, the act of weaving from the bottom up was not going to suffice. So I built a table where the yarn was the feet. Made to accommodate multiple bodies from both directions, the resulting piece was an interesting patchwork effect, where the width of each person's weft was determined by how much space was available to them at the time. Knowing that this was a festive room with a DJ, and not everyone was going to want to participate, I also brought in my couch and a basket of markers for tagging and decoration. 2015 opened with our visit to Glenwood House in Laguna, the first of its kind in Southern California, started in 2013. It's a residential facility for live, work, play for adults with special needs, including Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and autism. In consideration of possible dexterity issues, I dyed pieces of muslin with multiple color changes to lessen the manipulation of blending the smaller yarn. I also wanted to demonstrate the act of recycling, as well as the rebellion of ripping apart fabric. I left inspired by the raw wildness of their work. A few days later, January 13th, 2015, my first garden event with Ron Finley at the historic Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum for the Mindful Living Health Expo was aimed towards mostly like younger kids and families. So I decided to build my version of a greenhouse out of PVC pipe, seen here by a happy team member at Orchard Supply Hardware, along with my design sketch. The first half of 2015 was filled with events. February, the Chinese New Year at Sky Bar Mondrian Hotel in Hollywood. April, a video presentation for arts education at Lamel Theater, hosted by Sir Ken Robinson, a thought leader on creativity and education. May, a fundraiser for the Center for Women and Girls in Uganda. Mother's Day, I was at Manifest Justice. June 2015, the first The Function, a free community event hosted by the Ron Finley Project at the park at Inglewood Public Library. Fun fact, Brian Sonia Wallace, aka Red Poet, aka Trudy's son, he joined me here with his typewriter. More images from the inaugural event where I modified the greenhouse from earlier in the year, and I continue to participate in this nonprofit event every year since 2019 until the pandemic paused. The remainder of 2015 was a personal time for me, and I worked on weaving branches for a commission to build a tree on a hillside residence in Malibu. March 2016, at this point I understood what happened when I was present to hold space for these weaving moments. But I also wondered if that energy could be duplicated when I was not there. How much information would I have to leave behind, and could I find this public-private space to test my ideas? We launched the concept for Venice Art Ball at my friend's shop off of Abbot-Kinney, and the day we put it up, someone asked to buy it. They loved it just as is, but I said no, it was not for sale. My plan was to leave it there for 2 months and not visit it. And if I let it go now, I would miss out on the entire aim. And sure enough, it worked, and in the process, I was introduced to the artist in the upper right-hand corner, and we eventually exhibited together on a fashion piece 2 years later at the FIU Jewish Museum in Miami, Florida. June 25th, 2016, Heidi Duckler Dance Theater hosts a night market inviting artists to interpret stories of selected store owners. We were assigned a gentleman from Ghana. He was the only one that had a ramp, so naturally I turned it into a room, and we told the story of the spider god. His smile here is the stamp of success. But for me, It was the photo at the bottom showing him and a guest lying down on his ramp, relaxing on my hand-sewn wax print pillow. July 2016, in collaboration with that Venice shop in Heroes We Trust, I'm back in my hometown of New York City. And that's my mom on the right. I needed to figure out how to pack for the plane, so I revisited the PVC pipes, which worked great for this industrial space. I designed it in a way that the center woven piece could be left behind at Williamsburg's location of Artisan Sleeve. Now we're on the home stretch of this series. September 15th through 18th, 2016, in Heroes We Trust booked an art space at Kazoo Del Mar. An art, music, and food festival. This was the second year of the event, had multiple stages, 100 performances, 50,000 people, was massive. And I was just provided about 10 feet of space to create an interactive piece. But even with 3 days, we all know weaving takes a long time. So I revisited all of my half-done experiments that had started in 2014, and I realized that this is when I have to release them. I removed them from their frames, laid them out, and stitched them together with red thread. Bundled it up, and off we went. The installer created a triangular foundation that also doubled as an interactive makerspace for guest artists throughout the weekend. The response was incredible. Once again, I stood in awe of the magic and innovation, the twists and the braids that began to develop when you let people of all ages play. And every time there was this moment of silence. No matter how loud the room, there was an instance where the participants just fall into sync. They breathe together. They focus on the gestures of their hands. They're off their phones, and they're fully present. So I guess this is what it looks like when I trick people into meditating. There are still a few empty spaces, and I held on to the structural foundation so I could take it out once more. Los Angeles Burning Man Decompression, November 5th, 2016. I invited my friends to dance within the space, connecting all the heartbeats and hands, filling up with gratitude for what we accomplished as an open-hearted collective. I never talked about these 2 years in this consolidated way, but it was the basis for everything else that followed. My original idea was to expand this piece to 2 to 3 times its size, but in April 2017, I got a call from a filmmaker friend asking me if I had anything large enough to use as part of an opening dream sequence for her latest short that was released on Vice later that year. When I saw it on the wall of her loft, we knew it was complete. A few months later, this tapestry was mounted in an archival case. Now it's a very heavy 10-foot square that requires a flatbed truck to move. I'm ready to revisit again and consider how to return it to public view. Thank you very much for listening. And in conclusion, all I did was take an art.
Can somebody help me with a Google slideshow thing for the, if you can just show me how to get it into view only? Oh, no, never mind. I think I got it.
So there's going to be a couple of slides that are flat.
Yes.
Just leave them there.
Okay. So.
me know when you're ready. I just want to make sure that
Okay, I think I'm there.
Good morning, y'all. My name's Soyoung.
Take your mask off, please.
Thank you for reminding me. My name is Soyoung. For those of you who haven't met me, I've been a guild member for about 3 years. And before I get started, I will just mention where the flax is at, not from the presentation, but it's a good reminder. I redded it last year, and now it's just sitting in a bundle because I haven't been able to find anyone that has flax processing equipment. So I'm in the process of finally making my own from some plans that Hans from Wool Gather's had, but I'm making some changes to his wool flax. We can talk more about it later, but I was hoping to have some stuff to show you, but sometimes life happens, as everyone in here knows. So anyway, yeah, I've been a guild member for about 3 years. Thank you very much, Virginia and the guild, for having us all here. I figured that I would talk about things I've been working on lately, so recent projects. And if you want the full scope of my artistic work, you can look at my portfolio. But this is more of new and breaking news. Typically, I work in performance and textiles. But lately, I've been doing a lot of writing, and nothing's cohesive yet, and I don't know where this is going. Much of the writing intersperses with my day-to-day activities and my artwork. So as relevant, I'll read from my journal here and there. So in this introduction, I think it might be good to give you guys some context from my journal. So I grew up in a suburb called Federal Way, which is a little south of Seattle, and a lot of my writing is about that place. We were the South Puget Sound trash separate from Seattle. We were where the rednecks come from. But in recent years, the town flipped to become big box suburbs, and somehow both of these ideas of townhood coexisted and intermingled and interbred. And this isn't part of my journal, but generally my interests, I like the outdoors and things you can do in it, such as foraging, hiking, and swimming, which are all very Seattle activities. I will also preface the rest of this talk by saying, like, I apologize in advance. I know that my accent is very mumbly and it can be a little hard to understand, so I will work as hard as I can to enunciate, but this is also just where I come from. Just double check. So my work is about vulnerability, memoir, and identity. I worked on an exhibition with my collaborator, Anthony Boblovich, called Hold Space. And this took place at Open Source Gallery last November. We have an ongoing practice which centers on storytelling, tales of our mothers, community, and often our work centers around our experiences as children of immigrants and the impact it's had on our upbringing. An important aspect of the show was the 1.5 year delay on getting it open because there was a pandemic. To open April 2020. Yeah. So artistically, because of that, it was tumultuous because we had another 1.5 years to iterate and change course for the show during a time when our intimate relationships were extremely strained and we were being actively traumatized every day because of a pandemic that was going on. So what we did is we presented a multi-part project in which a guided prayer allowed visitors to meditate on the current moment and think about what they might either want to hold on to more tightly in their lives or let go of. Also, I totally forgot about this until just this moment, but this show broke up both of our relationships. We presented a oh, wait, I already said that. So we accompanied the prayer with 10 liberating tenets. These emerge from our personal myth and legend in our ongoing practice. And these emerge from our memories that we were revisiting in the course of putting together this show. The 10 liberating tenets manifested into hands that each have some somewhat obtuse text to pair. The layout of our show is very informed by religious centers such as temples and churches.
Wait, what are you doing? Because I have to shadow it on here.
Now we're going to
So should I fast forward?
you can, so you don't have to play the whole video, you can just go to the next slide. In the
Oh,
so here's a couple installation shots. This was the place where people were invited to sit down and meditate on the thing that they wanted to let go of or hold on to. And so there's some paper, pencils, and a place to sit. Picture of one of the texts. So this is just another excerpt from my journal. After a summer of wandering around stoned, asking strangers in my head, "Are you my husband?" It was a strange and somewhat emotional situation to find myself in, choosing my own wedding ring from Santee Alley. Is $10 all I'm worth? I considered going to the mall jeweler to buy a real diamond ring. My proxy deserves more. I deserve more. So generally, all this writing I've been doing has been kind of falling under this like umbrella that I'm calling Are You My Husband? I had a really super intense summer and the kind of homecoming written about by a lot of artists and filmmakers who ever grew up in a small conservative town. For me and my own situation, I read a lot of young adult fiction. I spent a lot of time reflecting on my childhood, especially because I'm of color, who grew up under a very white suburb. So with that, I have a longer piece to read you guys from my journal. And also, by the way, like, because I don't know where this is going, like, this might actually be the only time this like makes it out into the world, because it's very in my journal, I've been generally phrasing it under Are You My Husband? And honestly, it's just like some fantasies I have about all the different boys that I go boy crazy for. So there's a lot of very good chapters in there. But this section in my Google Doc that I've been putting together to start to organize this stuff is literally just entitled, Yay! I was looked funny as a youth in Federal Way because I was different. My mother told me when she picked me up from school, she would look for the gathered groups of boys. I have realized people think I'm gay. People must have thought I was gay. I am gay, but gay has nothing to do with what you see in front of you. I only ever wanted to feel a Trias boy, a teenage boy, a white teenage boy. I lived in opposition to the garbage tropes that so clearly groomed women into lives of low wages, dentist lives, preyed on their underdeveloped ambition. Boy Scouts caused minor havoc in the woods. Girl Scouts put beads on lanyards. Boy Scouts learned to enact change in their communities, taking on years-long self-initiated public projects. Girl Scouts learned the ropes of MLM schemes, moving predetermined product to friends, family, and strangers in order to earn prizes many times less valuable than cash investment. I don't want to grow into the endless cycle of Mary Kay, Tupperware, Herbalife, Young Living, LuLaRoe, falling into the predatory economic trap set for women in the suburbs. Instead, I want to feel the earth beneath my feet, live a rugged existence, grow muscle capable capable of heavy work. Be smart, be charming, chase adventure. If that makes me gay, I guess I'm gay. And so this is followed by a list of white boys who got into trouble and suffered any consequences for their actions, and are characterized as being brave, easygoing, fun, or strong. George Washington, Johnny Appleseed, Tom Sawyer, Mark Twain, Kerouac, Hemingway, The Outsiders, Catcher in the Rye, Grease. Ghost, George Bush, The Goonies, Bill and Ted, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Superman, the World Wrestling Federation, Weezer, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Peter Pan, Pinocchio, Johnny Tremaine, Anthony Bourdain, Alice Israel, Jeff Koons, James Dean, Marlon Brando, Easy Rider, Knight Rider, Starsky and Hutch, anyone in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, any character Seth Rogen has ever played, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Donald Trump, Jeff Kavanaugh, Tony Hawk, Shaun White, the Founding Fathers, characters in American Psycho, Fight Club, Super Mario, Donkey Kong, Zelda, DuckTales, Little Rascals, Space Jam, Looney Tunes, and also skateboarding, snowboarding, surfing, skimboards, pretty much any sport on a board, pretty much any sport. So also in this post Freaky Friday trip from last summer, because of like a lot of reckonings I've had with myself, a lot of this past year, I have been very intentional about living out the teenage dreams that I lost access to as a child. And in general, I make a big point to let myself indulge into traditionally masculine activities. Because like honestly, I'm just not scared like I used to be. And this includes woodworking. So I'll show you a few things that I have built for myself around the house. And not all of these were made in the last year's woodwork. I'm not super prolific. But so here's some like curtain rod hangers that I made that are fun. A lamp that I made. We need a lamp. This is the situation with my working board because I do not know why they don't just put good mounting hardware that will fix your working board to the wall and not make it slip. So, right, guys? Right? Like, wouldn't it be so great if we had stuff that actually worked right off the bat, or like we're taught how to work so we can do it for ourselves? Wouldn't it be so great? So, anyways, I built like a French seat that goes on the wall, and there's a little piece here just so it's flush, but now it's nice to fix on the wall and comes off. Usually if I need to. Made like a little hangboard to be pull-ups, although I do it twice, whatever is fine. And some like good shelves for my house. So I like building some funny furniture around the house. And what's been fun in this like woodworking adventure is feeling comfortable asking for help from my male friends. And so like the fun thing that I made with my friends who are good fabricators is I made my little working paddle and little mini loom, which has been fun to, again, I don't use it as much like it's over on the table here. I want to take a look, but it's good. It's been awesome to just do like little sampling and not have to worry about like really setting up a real board with like anything. So I've always liked building tools, and it's definitely fun to be able to make things for yourself that are maybe economically infeasible objects. That fill gaps in my life and practice, and practice prototyping and making it fun. And it's also like fun to like live with the things that you build and start to think of little ways that you can change them. And because wood is such a forgiving material, you can like, take the object down, cut a piece off too big, screw another thing into it if you need to like add an attachment. Like it's just fun. And what's also fun about like being a lot more intentional these days about collaborating with my friends or working in their shops is like we start to rub off on each other. And so like my friends Nick and Chachi have this really awesome shop where they have like now they have a laser, but mostly they have like metalworking and woodworking equipment. And so my studio equipment is starting to look like theirs because they use a lot of like pink and orange acrylic their studio equipment is starting to look like mine because like it's starting to like leave some things around. So some collaboration. The other thing I'll mention in terms of indulging my teenage fantasies is I've always wanted to learn how to skate. And so I ended up last summer buying 2 skateboards, one that I only use in my hometown in case I need to run my teenage angst instead of like flashing out at my mom because that's not cute anymore. And I also have a deck that I have in LA. And what I just love about skating is it's really just so much about having a safe place to grow and mess up and take risks. And it's a place where people just want one another to succeed and like cheer for each other for our successes. And it's really just awesome to be part of that community. So as I was at the skate park the other day, I was thinking about like how do so the other thing that I do is fashion design and tailoring. And when I was at the skate park the other day, I had this thought of like, how does someone actually describe like what I make? And what it came to was like she's a fashion designer, but she also spends a lot of time outdoors. So I've been making clothes for myself that are a mix of utilitarian wear that could totally be taken on hike and that I wear just as much as I can. I also make a lot of costumey pieces and statement pieces because, like we said, making it fun. Showing you a couple themes. So this is like a funny, oh wow, it's a really long shot here. This is like a funny little ruffle that I made that like my friend and I, he told me like pretty much our nose to a vampire king breeze, which got busted by the cops. Like sexy ruffle that can be worn in 2 different ways. Funny little short, so I wore a little bit too short initially, so then I added these godets to add a little bit more fullness from the leg. Jacket that I collaborated with my friend Anthony. Some visor. Hat for my friend. That's her studio. Friend asked me to make masks with pronouns because he was having employees that stopped shopping misgendered. So that was a fun project to work on. Some shibori. I do a lot of shibori. I really go for the full. Shibori. These are my 2 favorite hiking shirts that are just that are like just straight from REI and I dyed them. And then that's about it for the artist talk. But so the artist part's over. But I just want to just tack on a little bit talking about my money making scheme. I like money making schemes, y'all. So I'm a tailor, and a lot of that I do is alterations. But I just love the idea of tailoring, of making clothing exactly for one person, both in terms of fit and style. I just like making a personal connection with people through clothes. So one of my clients is Candace Parker, who is, I don't know if y'all follow the WNBA, but she's like the LeBron of the WNBA. And we were getting ready for March Madness coverage where she was commentating alongside Shaq for TNT. And so she put on the shirt initially and she really didn't like it. And it was fun to say like, well, I know that this is like an expensive designer piece, but why don't we just keep working on it? So I added these like very strong additional pleats for more drama. And as soon as she saw it, her face lit up and she could totally see the potential of just, you know, like what it's like to work one-on-one and making her fashion her own. Another fun thing that I did is I worked on the TV show The Real Husbands of Hollywood last summer. And the running joke is that Nick Cannon, who's on the left, has something like 9 children by like 3 or 4 women. And so, yeah, just like in pop culture, he's made fun of a lot for this. And so we had to get some fabric for him. I was down at International Sohani Holland, and my costume designer was like, "Oh, just something you like." I was like, "You gotta use this fabric right now." So I had the opportunity to make custom piece for him quickly for the show. So I gave him like the original life in his uterus, and from it are emerging all these babies and breasts and chicks. Felt very good about that whole job. Because I get to make fun of them too, while I work. But back to this idea of making clothes exactly for one person in terms of fit and style, like I got word back from production that he was incredibly like overjoyed by like getting to wear this and he sent me things directly to me. And not that celebrity matters stuff. But regardless, it's really fun to still have the opportunity to bring this conceptual art practice wherever I go. That's it. Thank you so much.
If people have questions, for one or more, yes.
This is kind of a mechanical question for Edi Dai. What cotton are you raising for slow and local? You said you started some cotton?
And repeat.
So the question is, what cotton are you raising?
What varieties of cotton were you growing to slow and local?
For slow and local, I was specifically growing an Arkansas green, an Erling green, and a Mississippi brown.
Yeah, have you ever grown the Acadian brown?
No, I haven't. I mean,
It's hard to get.
I did get to go there and meet one of the farmers of Acadian brown cotton. I didn't ask him all about seeds or anything. I was just in awe that he was growing like an acre of brown cotton. And so no, I haven't, but I would love to.
Yeah, I was interested to hearing about that. My mother's family, we run with the Acadians. So it's impossible to get the seeds, but it's great hearing you talk about that.
I mean, we can talk later. Maybe there's a way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions? They also brought, each of them brought show and tell objects. So I suspect that rather than formally sitting here and entertaining questions like on the stage and everything, we should just have you kind of turn on the lights and bring out your stuff and talk to people individually. Thank you very much. Oh, yes.
I just wanted to remind, I think there are 2 of you here today that are volunteered to be cashiers. There are more openings if anybody else wants to volunteer. That after Edi finishes showing her stuff to everybody, she's going to do some training on the new system. So give her some time to do that, and then meet her over at that far table. Okay.
Well, everybody has the other seats outside around.
No problem.
And if you, before you leave, if you didn't get a validation for your card, please stop by and get one from me.
Virginia, can I stop recording?